Alrighty, so one more time, Ask the Video Guys. Usually something that we do a little bit earlier on in the month, and usually this show is all about fan-submitted questions, people who have asked us real tech support questions that we want to try to answer with some of the gear that we sell here at videoguys.com. I'm Oliver Ricketts. Gary Bettan is away at a trade show this week, so actually it's going to be myself hosting the show, and today we're actually joined by Glen Seaman. Hi, Glenn.
Hey, good morning, Oliver.
Good morning.
Or afternoon, actually.
So jumping right into it, this is the NDI special episode of Ask the Video Guys. This episode, if you didn't see the pre-show, is going to be all about how to set up NDI with your network and some of the snafus that you might hit with your network, how to fix them, some workarounds. Joining us is Glenn, who is the workflow sales specialist for Broadfield Distributing. Glenn is available to distributors all around the country, trying to fix different things with NDI, giving them his advice and his expertise, including us. He's available to us as a resource as well. You can reach us if you have any questions for next month's show, which will be regular user-submitted questions. You can definitely do that at Video Guys on YouTube, as well as Video Guys on Facebook, or Video Guys on Twitter. Or you can send us an email at videoguy@videoguys.com. Also, keep in mind, this is a live show. I can see what is going on in the chat. So if you have an NDI-based question that you would like myself or Glenn to answer, you can throw that in the chat board, and I will actually be able to see it here. Glenn, you ready to get into some questions?
I am.
Alrighty, let's do it. So the first question that we came up with is a big focus on NDI is power over Ethernet, or PoE. So the first question a lot of people have is, what is PoE? And what are some important things that you need to understand?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Oliver, and it's one of those things that a lot of people are confused by. So if you can just click advanced for me.
Mm-hmm.
So PoE at its simplest is just injecting. So you've got a lot of cables in an Ethernet cable. PoE is just taking those couple of those cables or a couple of those wires and putting power on them. So that's it at its simplest. If you go back to that, there's a few different flavors of PoE. So PoE, everybody refers to PoE, power over Ethernet, but there are different flavors of PoE. So there's PoE, PoE plus, PoE plus plus, and then there's also something called high power PoE. I've also seen it branded as ultra PoE by some companies. Basically, the space that we're in, in video is really going to be between PoE and PoE plus plus. And the big thing you need to look at is just really what are the power requirements. So PoE is going to be, maximum 15 watts. So that's going to be things like NDI converters. So your Connect Sparks, your Bird Dogs, low end converters are going to be in that 15 watt range. When you start stepping up to PoE plus, that's going to be your 30 watts. Those are going to be your cameras. Your PTZ cameras, and then sometimes you'll get some that are in the PoE plus range, which is 60 watts. The big thing there's a lot of things that confuse people about PoE that you need to understand too, which is, there's delivery to the port and delivery to the device. So the definition of PoE is, okay, a PoE standard device is going to give you 15 watts to the port. That means that Ethernet jack is getting 15 watts. Once you plug in a cable to that, the device itself is only getting a little over 12 watts. And that's basically just lost through heat and everything else like that. So those are the two things you really need to look at, is delivery to the port, delivery to the device. So, right. When you're looking at things, you really need to understand, okay, how much power is it? And at the high end, the PoE high power, which is the newest one, that's 100 watts, 71 watts to the device. That's for things like televisions, tablets. That's the next level for that. So those are really just things. It's just putting power on some of the wires in an Ethernet jack or an Ethernet cable to give you power at the device.
Right, absolutely. And, obviously this seems like, simple on a surface level, plug and play, but there are certain specifics that you have to get into, which leads us into our next question.
Yeah, well, actually, let's expand a little bit on that more. So yeah, when we start talking about this is where people really get kind of hosed. Is if you take an 8-port switch, we'll say, and it's got 4 ports with PoE on it. This is very common. Not all of your switches will have PoE to all the ports. So we're going to have an 8-port switch with 4 ports of PoE on it. Okay. People think that that means that I've got 3 ports all with 30 watts of power and I can plug anything in. That means I can plug in all my PoE devices and be happy. That's not reality, Oliver. The real thing is you have to look at something called total power delivery. So when you're looking at switches, they are all rated for total power delivery. And so let's take that same scenario. We've got that same 8-port switch, but it's got a total power delivery of 50 watts. Okay, right. So that means the amount of power it can deliver is 50 watts. So if we go in and let's click on it, and the first thing we're going to plug in is we're going to plug in a PTZ camera with 25 watts. And now we're going to add an HDMI NDI converter for 15 watts. That means I've used 30 watts. That means I've only got 5 watts left for anything else. And there's really nothing that I've found that'll work at 5 or 10 watts. But that's where people run into problems, is they plug in a whole bunch of things and then they suddenly realize, oh, I don't have enough power. Or worst case, what I've seen happen is they're right on that threshold. They plug in a couple PTZ cameras. Those cameras don't need a lot of power until you start moving them. So what sometimes will happen is, you'll be great, you'll have all your cameras up, you'll suddenly do a pan, and that's drawing just enough power that it pulls extra power from the other camera, and you lose that camera. So power budgeting is a very important thing, and that brings us to the next slide, which is really, the next question too.
Right, so the question being, how can I tell what my devices require and how much power will I need? Obviously, you have all these different variables, so how do you narrow that down? How do you pick out your device and how much you're going to give it?
Yep. So, right now we're going to talk about this more later, but we're going to separate kind of switching needs from power needs. So if you click on the slide, so what you really need to do is, first off, you want to look at what's called power budgeting, and that's what you're going to do. Is you're going to build a power budget. These are not animating the right way, but that's okay. So if you look at on the left-hand side, you might want to bring this up full screen. If you look at your left-hand side, this is just a typical spec sheet for a product. And somewhere in there, you want to go and you want to find out what your power supplies are. So this is a PTZ camera, it's NDI capable, but really what you're after is that 12 watts of power. So what you're going to do is you're going to build in the middle there, I've got my power budget worksheet. I'm going to go in, I'm going to list all my devices, I'm going to put down the watts that they need. And then just basic math will tell me, okay, great, if I've got a bunch of these 12 watt, cameras, I'm going to need X number. So that's really a simple way to do it. The problem is not everybody lists things that way. Not everybody is nice enough. Sometimes they'll just say, hey, it's PoE plus or it's PoE plus plus, which is great, but that can be a big range. So there's a company, I'm out of Dallas. There's a company that I met that's based down in Austin called PoE Texas. They've got some great products. We're going to talk about those in a minute, but they've got some really great resources. I recommend people go there, look at their site. They've got things for PoE planning, but they've also got a great little app. It's also available on their website called the PoE Calculator that allows you to go in and put in your devices, put in your types of cable, put in a lot of information, and it'll really get right down to kind of helping you figure out what your PoE requirements are going to be. But really the first big thing is finding that, wattage requirement and then building that list to say, okay, great, this is what I need. So that's really basically the way to do it.
Right. And oh, no, I'm sorry, Glenn. Go ahead.
That's okay. Good.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick just there for a second. I've got a couple questions here on the chat board. One of them being, I need to configure a setup with 4 remote cams. How is it possible without a 4 remote PC? So the first thing I want to say to that, Marino, is that every NDI setup is going to be a little bit different in its own environment. So if we're getting into specifics of your setup, we can definitely help you out. But it will be something that we need to get a little bit more information on your setup. So you can definitely give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. You can reach myself at extension 1111. You can reach Glenn at extension 1153. Yep. And we will be able to help you out with some of those questions. And then the second question is do you need more power for longer runs? So if you're doing a longer cable run with PoE, do I need more power, or is there a general standard?
You know, again, that's where like the PoE Texas resources kind of come in. That's great. That actually brings me to a good point. This is one of the things I had to actually want to talk about is I see this a lot is, you know, you wouldn't walk in and go to a cafeteria where somebody's eating a bunch of food and just pick up something and eat it without thinking about it. But yet people will go and pick up any old cable and plug it in and use it a lot of times. And, you know, one of the cheapest but best investments you can make is cables. If you don't know if it's Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6, forget it. You know, buy yourself a decent Cat 6 cable, especially when you start doing PoE. You know, you're sending electrical through that. You want better, you know, you want a better cable that's going to give you better signal integrity and all those things. So, you know, always look at your cables first. You know, cable lengths, you know, again, that PoE calculator, that's something to look into. But just make sure you're getting good Cat 6 cables. Always get the best cables you can get.
Yeah, and in our experience, even here, a lot of times, you know, when we're trying to troubleshoot a more complicated workflow, it does come down to some of the really simple stuff like, okay, what cable are you using? How's your connection? All these smaller things that you always think it's going to be a really huge problem that you need to fix. But sometimes it does come down to as simple as get a better cable.
Yep.
Leading me into my next question, what if you already have your network set up, but it's without PoE? How do you get power over Ethernet?
Yeah, so this is great because, you know, a lot of times we've already got existing infrastructure. We've got great network infrastructures, but we want to start taking advantage of PoE. And you know, this might answer that other person's question too. I couldn't understand the full portion of it, but sometimes all you need to do is use what's called a PoE injector. There's lots of them out there. I'm going to pull up this again is the guys PoE Texas, just because they've got a couple great ones. We've got two options here. Just to kind of tell you what they are. Remember, all PoE is doing is just putting power on a line. You know, it's taking, you know, some of those wires and putting power on them. So you've got, on the left-hand side, we've got a single PoE injector. So this is if you just want to do one device and give it PoE. This one's PoE++, so this will actually go up to those 60 watts, so the much higher end, you know, control surfaces, things like that. The other one is a 4-port. And all you're doing is you're just plugging from your network switch into those 4 ports. You're plugging your cameras into the other 4 ports, and you're giving power to those. So that is a great way of doing it. If I've already got a great network infrastructure, I don't want to introduce another switch. I don't want to be bothered with that. You just inject PoE into the line. Great way to do it.
Alrighty, awesome. And again, I do want to remind everybody, if you're just tuning in now, definitely jump into the chat board if you have any questions. This episode is specifically on NDI, but we are here to field questions on the topic. So if there's anything that that you need answered, definitely drop it down there. If we don't get to it on the show, maybe we'll hit you up on the phone or over email, but we will definitely be in contact to get those questions answered. And hi, everybody over at the LiveView Summit in Cancun. Hey, everybody. Alrighty, so next question. What do we got here? Which PoE switch do we recommend for small production? So this question is more about a high school gym or something like we're doing here, which is a small studio setup, or even in a house of worship. How do we pick out the switch, and is there an end-all be-all answer?
Yeah. So no, you know, honestly, there is no one size fits all. You know, because it's a network switch. There's a lot of things that need to be factored in. If you're part of a bigger corporation, if you've got to feed into the rest of the network, you know, are there contracts? You know, maybe, you know, we could recommend, you know, a Dell switch, but they've got a Cisco contract. So, you know, the short answer is there are a lot of things that go into that. So the way I'm going to look at this first off is, yeah, I'm going to educate you on kind of the things you need to look at. And then let's talk about really a small production like what you guys are doing. You're tied to a corporate network,
right,
but you have your own production environment. So we'll end on that, but you know, let's err on educating people first. So again, this is where we start with that PoE budget. So if you look at the slides, you know, you want to look at all of the devices that you have hooked up. So, you know, here I've got, again, my PoE budget worksheet. You know, we're starting with, you know, port 1 is going to be my house connection. That's what connects me to the rest of the outside world. Then I'm going to have my switcher. So that, you know, in this case could be a Tricaster. If I have a Tricaster, with a higher end control surface, a TC1 where I have an Ethernet control surface, that's going to be plugged into there. Then I've got three NDI cameras, an NDI converter. Those are the only things that are drawing power so far, so that's great. I add my watts in there, and then we're going to have a laptop for doing, graphics, or maybe it's going to be, for doing live panel or something like that. So those are all the ports. So I've got 8 ports. So if we look at this worksheet, what that tells me is at a minimum for my studio, I need 8 ports and something that's going to give me 100 watts total power delivery. Okay.
Right.
So that kind of says, okay, that's great. That's what I want. Realistically, if I want to be able to expand, if I want other things, I might be looking at something that's 16 ports and 120 watts. Other things that can throw caveats into this is, maybe I don't need a house feed on my switcher. If I've got a system, and this is really a nice environment, is if I've got a system that's got 2 network jacks, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one network jack go into my PoE switch for my production network. The other network jack will plug into the house network for my live streaming. The nice thing about that is I've isolated those worlds so that my IT guy, he doesn't have to worry about my production network. I can keep him off of that. So these are the things you want to look at. So once you have this power budget and you have this in mind, now you know how you can go shopping. So if we go to the next slide, I'll give you an example of, here's the Netgear website. And if we look at that, we'll see that, great, I've got a couple different switches. Whoops, no, you were good where you were.
Okay, sorry, Glenn.
We've got a couple different switches. You want a managed switch, an unmanaged switch. There's a middle section there, and that is where it talks about your number of ports, your number of, your total power budget. So, hey, there's an 8-port. That first one is an 8-port, or I'm sorry, that's a 4-port, it looks like. I can't read that far, but, but it's only got 19 watts power budget. That's going to give me the power for one, NDI converter for the most part. So those are the things that you want to look for when you start building it. So if we go to the next slide, now you can kind of start doing comparisons. You can look at the different switches that are out there, and you can say, okay, great, this one's got 8 gig ports. This one's got 24. This has got, SFPs on it. This has, this type of power. It really allows you to kind of look and find the right switch for your environment based on all of your needs. Now, the real question was, what do we recommend? If you came to me and said, Oliver, I really need a switch. The one I'm pointing to right now that we really like and is great and tried and tested is the Luxel. That's a great switch. It's 8 gigabit ports. It's got 2 gigabit uplink ports. It's got 2 SFP ports. It's got 130 watts power budget. It's got a total switching capacity of 24 gigabytes. So that's a great switch. So for your studio, and when we start upgrading that, that's probably going to be the one we jump to because it's a great isolated port. I'm not worried about any of my other networking issues for the rest of the company. All I care about is my production environment having PoE and giving me the performance I need. And this is a key point too. So, NDI has been pitched for a while as being, hey, it's standard networking. You don't need this. And I think the folks at NewTek are starting to, and everybody's starting to kind of realize we need to rephrase that a little bit. Yes, the truth is, NDI does run off of standard networking. You don't need an IP networking switch like you do for the SMPTE standards. But that being said, you still need to invest in a real switch. You need to invest in a decent switch. And, that $25 switch you're going to buy at, Best Buy is probably going to be a problem. The switch we're looking at.
Well, you can use the $25 switch. You just got to be ready to buy a couple of them as you start burning through them and not working.
Yeah, the switch we're looking at here is MSRP is a sub $500 switch, but it's a switch that is built for IP. It's used by Audet. It's used by a lot of companies. It is aware of AV network switching, so it's a great switch. So you got to look at spending a little bit of money there, but it's still a standard switch. It's a standard networking switch. It's not consumer level networking switch, but it is a standard networking switch. But you've got to look at that. So that's a great switch. Right now that's the one we're kind of favoring, and that would be the one I would kind of start as a recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the big thing we want to stress here, like I said earlier on in the show, is that with NDI, it's all about your environment and where you are. So just because the Luxel works in our small setup doesn't mean you may not need to go bigger or smaller. You do have to evaluate all your different variables. But the Luxel is a solid recommendation.
Yeah, it is, and again, it's great for, like I said, you guys, I would see that comfortably fitting into a church, into a small, small high school for sporting arenas. It's just a great. Again, it's going to have 8 ports, is more than enough for what you need to do. You've actually got the uplink port, so you gain a port as far as being able to communicate with the rest of your network. So it's a good place.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so moving on to the next question, and I actually think Adam and I are going to start to field this one, which is. Can you mix NDI HX with full NDI? For a long time, this has been a really loaded question, and anybody who's been watching this show for an extended period of time will know that we've answered this question in the past with a no. Our production system, we've tried to bring in, the main show we usually do has some NDI HX variables. Sometimes we'll have NDI HX cameras hooked in. So when we try to bring in something that is full NDI, like some of the new cameras that have come out, we've had some issues bogging down the system and how fast the thing can move. But there have been new updates with NDI 4.0, and there's a new Tricaster update with 7.0. So Adam, what is the answer to this question? Can you mix?
Sure. Well, the first thing you're going to absolutely want to do is upgrade to the latest firmware, which is, as you see on the screen, it's Tricaster 7.0. We did that. We upgraded our Tricaster. How long did you think that took?
Well, we're going to jump to that in just a minute, jump the gun a little bit there. Okay. But, the point is that you can do this. We've made the updates. We've made the change. And we're looking at a much better position for somebody who wants to bring all these production elements into their workflow.
Because our goal is to make our studio full NDI. Everything is being brought in with NDI. And this new update is certainly going to help us get there. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing just what we can do with our little studio. So.
Absolutely, and we've already added on some NDI updates recently with our new camera and some other features that we'll actually jump into a little bit later on in the show. But jumping on to the next question here, you mentioned updating the NewTek Tricaster, which is the production system we use for this whole show. I think Glen's got a little bit of experience in this one as well. Adam, about how long did that take us, and what do you need to do to back that system up?
Well, the great thing about the Tricaster, from what I've seen and what we've done, you can either back up your projects individually, or you can do a mass one, and that might take some time. So, like when we were updating this, it took a little bit longer than normal because we were backing up a lot of stuff before we did the upgrade itself. The upgrade took something like an hour and a half at most.
And I want to stress also that upgrading the Tricaster is a very straightforward process. It was very easy. You go to the NewTek website. It's made available to you, which is something that I appreciate, just that it's not a big daunting task. You can easily update. And, usually it'd take about an hour, but we use our Tricaster extensively, so we had to take the extra steps to back up all of our system files so that we could keep this show going.
And you're always going to want to do that. If you're ever upgrading the firmware on anything, you're always going to want to make sure that you have backups ready to go, just in case the worst case scenario happens. Maybe something crashes. You're going to want to make sure that you have everything backed up, so that way, worst case scenario, something does crash, you can go back and you'll be ready to keep going forward. Because one thing we've certainly learned going live every week is that the unexpected tends to always like to happen. So, having everything backed up is a good way to avoid a catastrophe like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, now that we're talking about setting up our new our studio with full NDI and the new layouts that we're going for and the new things we're going to be trying this year, let's talk about cameras. How do I update, or if my camera supports NDI, how can I upgrade it? There's a lot of cameras that have NDI capability but don't have the support built in. some cameras from PTZOptics, all of the Panasonic PTZ cams, as well as the Panasonic AG-CX350. But you can get that upgrade available from NewTek. It's a $300 upgrade that'll give you the full NDI capability. We actually just did this with the CX350, which is the camera that we filmed this show on.
Right.
Let's start with how long that took.
That really didn't take long at all. It's all a matter of learning the menus and where to go in the menus, which I'll have to say this. Panasonic, again, since it was the Panasonic camera, they have a great manual that shows you and tells you exactly where to go to set the NDI feature up. And again, it's a firmware upgrade, $300 from NewTek, and you'll be able to use it via NDI like we're doing right now. And it really didn't take long at all. It's all a matter of codes, really, at that point. To register it, NewTek will send you an activation code, or I believe it's called an activation code. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. But they'll send you a code, you paste it in to register it, and bam. Suddenly, no issues at all, that camera was picking up a signal, and I was able to pull it into our Tricaster. So in terms of how easy it is, that's about as easy as it's going to get. I can't think of an easier way to do that. And I believe we're going to have a video actually about,
So I did want to go into that. And again, it's worth mentioning that this process is the same for all of these cameras. It's not just the CX350. That's just the one that we've done. We are going to be releasing a video to Video Guys detailing how to do this process if you need the assistance, and that should be coming in the next couple of weeks, so definitely be on the lookout for that. Alrighty, so swinging on to the next one, and actually I'm going to bring Glenn back for this one here, because I want to talk about NDI tools. When you're in a production workflow, either if you're troubleshooting or you just want to bring in more NDI elements to up the quality of your show, what is the best way to do that, and what are some free apps that should be part of your workflow?
Yeah. So, the first thing is, go and get NDI tools. There's a bunch of great tools that are on there that are free from the NewTek website. You've got the link there. It's just ndi.tv/tools. There's a lot of them. For troubleshooting, the one I really like and rely on a lot is NDI Studio Monitor. When you're troubleshooting things, okay, great. I've got an IP cam, I've got an NDI camera, I've got a switch, I've got my Tricaster, I've got a lot of things in the loop and a lot of areas where I could be having problems. So NDI Studio Monitor, you can run that on your Tricaster on its own. You can run it on a laptop. NDI Studio Monitor just basically allows you to see any NDI feed. So the nice thing about that is you don't have to, if you can't get an NDI feed into your Tricaster, well, is it the Tricaster, is it the camera, is it the switch, what is it? If you load NDI Studio Monitor on there, and you pull up the feed, then you can kind of say, okay, great. If my laptop can get it, then it's something within my Tricaster configuration. Maybe I didn't have the right menu set. Maybe it's this, that, or the other thing. But that's a really great one. It allows you to see all the feeds that are available to you. It's also nice, especially with NDI 4.0 now, is the NDI Studio Monitor can be used to record. So you can use it to record an NDI stream if you need to. So it's just another recording device. But as far as like simple troubleshooting, it's a great little tool.
Yeah, and that was definitely, I'm sorry, Glenn, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
that's okay.
When we had a NewTek TriCaster Mini, the new one, in the studio, and we were just trying to get into that thing and see exactly how it works and how we could get it set up with our network, I know we were using NDI Studio Monitor extensively in that process to troubleshoot and to figure out how the product worked.
Yep, no, it's great. I've used it a lot of times. Just it's the simplest thing, especially because I do a lot of remote troubleshooting like I was doing with you. And, it's very hard to tell somebody to go to this menu, do that. And so sometimes it's just simple to get to the simplest thing and say, nope, okay, it's there or it's not there, or it's there and it's black. Can you control the camera, stuff like that? So it's great. The other one that's great both is, again, NDI Studio Monitor can monitor all your feeds. You can control your cameras from it, and you can record from it. So it's great as a troubleshooting tool, but it's also great as a tool on its own. The other one that I kind of use for troubleshooting sometimes is NDI Scan Converter. what it's used for is you plug it into your laptop, and it's basically a scan converter, just like the old hardware scan converters, where now anything in my laptop becomes an NDI feed. So that can be used because maybe it's a camera issue. So now I know I'm sending an NDI feed. If I can see my laptop in Studio Monitor, but I can't see my camera, it kind of points to something within my camera. So again, it's a great tool for bringing in PowerPoints, for bringing in
like we do on this show here, is all of our graphics come in through NDI scan converter.
Right. Right. So it's a great tool for that, but it's also, again, a free little troubleshooting tool of just being able to say, I want to create an NDI stream that I know of, that I have control, and can I see it? So those two tools are very useful. There's a bunch of other neat things in the NDI tools as well, but those are kind of two that I use quite a bit for troubleshooting.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to take a look at NDI Tools 4.1, we do have the link up on the screen, and we actually did just put it into the chat board, but I'll say it out here as well. ndi.tv/tools. And you can go there and find it, download it. They're awesome for any production workflow and for troubleshooting. It's almost a must-have, really. Moving on to actually, that's it. So those are all of our NDI questions. Hopefully what we've done here is given you just a little bit of insight into some of the issues you may be running into, how to fix some of those things, or just how to get set up in the first place. You can definitely check out the previous Ask the Video Guys. That one was more different products that we sell and different issues that people run into them and how to get them going, or different verticals that they can be used in. Those are up on YouTube, on Facebook. If you want to be on the next Ask the Video Guys, if you have a question that you want Gary or myself or Adam or maybe even Glenn to answer, you can reach us via email at videoguy@videoguys.com. You can reach out to our YouTube channel at VideoGuys, or Facebook at videoguys.com, or even Twitter at VideoGuys. And we are responsive on all of those channels, as well as over the phone at 1-800-323-2325. You can reach me at extension 1111. Glenn is extension 1153 if you have an NDI question that you need worked out. Or Adam, your extension is 1112? 1119. So extension 1119 as well. You can get in touch with any of us, and we'll definitely help you out with some of your different NDI questions, or just your regular questions about any of our products that we sell on videoguys.com. Next week on Video Guys Live Newsday Tuesday, Gary will be back in studio to talk about the LaCie Rugged SSD. We love these drives. They're small, rugged, great for bringing to any shoot. Really, really nice little drives. We'll have more about those next week on February 4th. The following week, February 11th, we're going to be talking about Atomos, all the different Atomos products, including the Atomos Shogun 7 with the new firmware update. We'll give you a look into what's new. That'll be on February 11th. And then the week after that, February 18th, we're taking a look at Panasonic, the CX350, which is the camera that we were talking about earlier with the NDI updates that we use to film this show. So those are all going to be really awesome shows for you to tune in, Facebook, YouTube, or via our website, videoguys.com. You can definitely check any of those out every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
All righty. So, if you're here watching, thank you very much for tuning in. Share this video, give it a like, comment on Facebook, comment on YouTube, and keep the questions coming. We love making these shows. We love trying to help you guys out with some of the different tech questions you may have. And the more response we're getting, the more of these we can make. So I'm Oliver from Video Guys. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Video Guys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.